What would you do if you found yourself trapped in an endless loop, reliving the same day over and over? What would you do if every moment seemed to repeat itself without escape? Write your answers in the comments under the video. A light morning mist shrouded the dense forest as a group of old friends set out for a day in the wilds of the northeastern United States. They were the kind of people who saw every adventure as a chance to test themselves, to escape the urban rush, and to search for answers to long-pondered questions. Among them were Michael, the confident leader, Sarah, observant and meticulous, Jake, the cheerful thrill-seeker, Lynn, quiet yet resolute, and Eddie, the indefatigable dreamer, always ready for unexpected twists of fate. The first hours of their journey passed in peaceful communion with nature. The rising sun's rays danced on mossy tree trunks, while birds filled the air with their morning songs. Laughter and light-hearted banter mingled with discussions of future plans, until suddenly a peculiar detail caught their eyes. A trail leading deeper into the forest revealed an uncanny symmetry, as if the path were deliberately laid out in precise repeating curves. None of them paid it much mind, attributing the unusual pattern to the spontaneous artistry of nature. Yet by noon, the mood had shifted. Along the path, they discovered an old, weathered wooden sign with an inscription so faded it barely read, a hint toward some crossing point. None of them recalled any mention of such a place in their maps or travel guides. Michael suggested they cross-check their notes, but even the GPS on their phone inexplicably began directing them off course, as if it too had lost its connection to reality. A subtle discomfort took root in each of them, yet they pressed on, assuming their imaginations had played a mischievous trick. As dusk fell, and the forest became cloaked in the heavy shroud of night, the group pitched their camp in a small clearing ringed by towering trees. Eddie, ever the storyteller, recounted an old legend about an ancient ritual in which the forest served as a gateway between worlds. His tale was filled with intricate details, mysterious markings on tree trunks, inexplicable phenomena, and accounts of people vanishing without a trace. His narrative stirred a mix of curiosity and a creeping sense of unease that gradually spread among the listeners. In the dead of night, as the hours deepened into darkness, an odd sound roused the friends from their sleep, a soft rustling, as though something or someone was moving stealthily among the trees. At first, they assumed it must be an animal, but the sounds grew steadily clearer, accompanied by faint, deliberate footsteps. Jake, glancing upward, noticed that the stars had suddenly halted their drift, fixed in an eerie stillness that lent the night a surreal quality. In that moment, the camp fell into a tense silence, broken only by the sporadic whisper of leaves. When morning came, the friends found their tents mysteriously displaced by several feet, and personal belongings scattered around the campsite. None could recall any movement during the night, and a growing sense of disquiet permeated their minds. Sarah, scrutinizing the surroundings with a practiced eye, noticed that the trail they had followed now veered toward a long-forgotten cabin. Hidden away by thick clusters of ferns and brambles, the cabin, nearly swallowed by decay, stood with peeling paint and deep cracks that betrayed years of neglect. A rusted key dangled on the doorstep, and mysterious symbols, etched into the weathered wood, hinted at an ancient secret. Driven by both curiosity and a desire to understand the unfolding mystery, Michael suggested they enter. The door creaked open, as if reluctant to break its long-held silence. unveiling a shadowy interior. Inside, the friends discovered handwritten journals and old maps, detailing locations where inexplicable events had once taken place. One journal, in particular, contained a cryptic note. Here, time slows and repeats, imprisoned like a captive with no will. Every word seemed steeped in an almost mystical gravity, and as they pored over the fragile pages, it became increasingly clear that the forest concealed far more than abandoned structures. Without warning, a loud knock resounded from outside, and the door burst open with a clamor. Standing on the threshold was a man clad in antiquated attire, his eyes brimming with despair and a silent warning. Though he said nothing, his gestures conveyed an urgent message, and his gaze, filled with the sorrow of lost hope, spoke volumes. The friends attempted to question him, yet no answers came. As suddenly as he had appeared, the stranger vanished, leaving only a chilling gust of wind and a lingering shadow of foreboding. From that moment on, the anomalies multiplied. Later that very evening, as they retraced their steps back to camp, every footfall along the once familiar trail felt like a déjà vu, a continuous recurrence of moments they had already lived. They huddled together, trying to piece together a coherent narrative from the events, yet every explanation only deepened the mystery. No matter which path they chose, every road led back to the same spot, as if the forest itself were orchestrating a cruel game with their fates. Again and again, they encountered the same indistinct images. On the clearing where they had set up their tents, the same stone lay at the base of an ancient oak. By a babbling brook, the water's rhythm repeated with uncanny precision. The sensation of being caught in a loop intensified, as though nature had frozen itself in a single, unyielding cycle. With each return to these recurrent sights, the friends tried altering their pace, changing direction, or even speeding up. Yet the forest's path always led them back to what was already known. One evening, as twilight surrendered to night, they found themselves in a glade overgrown with twisting bushes that formed a labyrinth of hedges. In the center of this natural maze lay a circular arrangement of old stones, and in its midst stood a statue with a blurred, indistinct face. Lynn, drawn inexplicably toward it, felt an overwhelming sensation that the stone figure was watching her, as if silently mourning a long-forgotten fate. Michael quickly realized that this could be a crucial clue, and suggested they study the statue's carvings. With painstaking care, they began to piece together fragments of an archaic language, symbols that might hold the key to breaking the sinister cycle. Days blurred into nights, and with every new cycle came not only the repetition of familiar paths, but also fresh trials. In one such cycle, the friends found themselves in an overgrown grove where ancient trees formed an almost imperceptible circle, and the wind seemed to murmur elusive words. Here, they encountered a baffling phenomenon. Every action, every utterance echoed back, not as expected, but in a distorted, mocking cadence. When one of them attempted to deviate from the predetermined route, the forest responded with a faint, almost imperceptible laughter, as if to tease their futile resistance. On one occasion, Eddie decided to inscribe notes on the rough bark of a tree to document the subtle changes they observed. Yet by the next morning, every trace of his writing had mysteriously vanished, as though it had never existed. Jake's attempt to capture the surroundings on camera resulted in blurry images, with a shadowy figure inexplicably appearing just beyond the frame. Gradually, they began to understand that every effort to record reality was in vain. Each cycle erased the evidence of the previous one, leaving them to start anew each time. At one point, Michael observed that time itself appeared to halt at a specific spot deep in the woods, a small rise encircled by ancient pines, where the scene seemed unnaturally static, as if the forest was issuing a silent warning. It was here that the friends stumbled upon an unusual artifact, an antique clock whose hands moved backward, its face adorned with cryptic symbols. This relic not only became an object of intense scrutiny, but also a potential clue in unraveling the mechanism behind the recurring phenomena. With a trembling voice, Eddie reminded Michael of the importance of this discovery, suggesting that the clock might be a part of a larger, mysterious device controlling the flow of time. With each new cycle, the friends became increasingly aware that the forest guarded secrets far deeper than physical decay. It was a repository of hidden truths, reaching back into ancient times. They began to search for connections between the artifacts they had found, the entries in the old journals, and the strange symbols that appeared at every turn. Sarah, dedicating herself to gathering information, uncovered a reference in one of the journals to an archaic ritual believed to shatter the cycle of repetitions. The entry declared that to break the loop, one must collect several symbols scattered throughout the forest and activate them at the point where all paths converge. Emboldened by this possibility, the group resolved to attempt a daring experiment. They devised a plan to split up and cover as much of the forest as possible, with each pair tasked with searching for the elusive clues left behind by time. Jake and Lynn set off toward a secluded brook, a location mentioned in the journal as a former site of ancient rites. Meanwhile, Michael and Eddie concentrated their efforts around the area near the antique clock, while Sarah remained at the cabin, a place where they had once encountered the enigmatic stranger. During their search, Jake and Lynn discovered a carved stone slab engraved with symbols strikingly similar to those seen on the cabin's walls. Each mark, like a piece of a grand puzzle, appeared to indicate a step in a sequence, a route that might reveal the secret to breaking the chain of endless repetitions. Their hands trembled as they gathered every fragment of information, acutely aware that even the smallest detail could prove decisive in their struggle for freedom. At the same time, Michael and Eddie, while exploring the area around the mysterious clock, stumbled upon a sunken chamber carved out of solid rock. There, they uncovered a circular design, etched into the stone and adorned with ancient motifs. They speculated that this very site might house the central mechanism behind the forest's strange behavior. It seemed that the clock was far from a mere antique. It was an integral component of an elaborate apparatus capable of altering the course of time. With quiet reverence, Eddie reminded Michael of the gravity of their find, and together they resolved to consolidate all the evidence in hopes of deciphering a method to shatter the endless loop. Gathering every symbol they had found, the friends combined their clues and slowly began to perceive a hidden design. The forest itself was a vast labyrinth, constructed to confound any traveler, trapping them in an unending cycle. Every path, every tree, every whispered echo was a fragment of a larger mosaic, with the pivotal element centered at a specific point, marked on an ancient map, pieced together from diary fragments and scattered relics. One of the darkest nights found them assembled around the carved stone circle they had previously discovered. The ancient pattern engraved in the rock was believed to be the location of their final trial. Each friend held a small talisman they had recovered from different corners of the forest, and an aged inscription, translated painstakingly by Sarah from the yellowed pages of a journal, lay before them. Michael studied the talismans intently, comparing their intricate designs to the symbols on the stone. He recognized that, when aligned in the correct sequence, they could activate a hidden mechanism. With measured, deliberate movements, the kind one might use when handling a fragile relic, he began to mimic the gestures outlined in the inscription. In that precise moment, the forest seemed to stir. A gentle rustle mingled with an ethereal chime filled the air, and the atmosphere vibrated with a palpable energy. One by one, the etched symbols on the stone began to glow with a soft, bluish light that steadily intensified. Then, as if the heavens themselves had cracked open, a burst of light split the dark sky, and in the center of the circle, an otherworldly projection materialized, a vision embodying the very essence of time. In that swirling display, images of days long past merged with fragments of the present, as though all the cycles of their entrapment were converging into a single, overwhelming moment. Every member of the group sensed an inexplicable stirring within, as if some dormant force was awakening deep inside, urging them to confront a truth they had long tried to ignore. From within the pulsating light emerged a strange, shadowy figure, surrounded by an iridescent glow. Wordlessly, it beckoned toward the center, where lay an ancient artifact, a crystalline object whose light shimmered in every hue of the rainbow. Realizing that this crystal might be the key to their liberation, the friends combined their strength. One by one, they removed their talismans and placed them in a circle around the glowing crystal. Then, as if guided by instinct, began to arrange the gathered symbols into a coherent sequence. Seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity, until at last, the crystal blazed with a brilliant radiance. In that instant, time itself seemed to pause. The forest held its breath. Then, as though someone had flipped an invisible switch, the relentless cycle of repetition shattered. Every winding path that had once led them in circles began to diverge, revealing subtle details that had been hidden in the monotonous loops of their imprisonment. With every step forward, the friends sensed the transformation of their surroundings, and slowly, the labyrinth of the forest started to yield new roots. The long-awaited awakening from the perpetual cycle did not occur in a single, dramatic moment, but gradually, like waking from a deep, disorienting sleep. The forest that had once seemed an endless maze began to offer signs of true direction. Where once every trail had repeated identically, now some subtle variations emerged, carving out pathways that led toward an unmistakable boundary, the line where the dense woods yielded to open skies. Drawing on their renewed strength and the certainty that they had discovered a way to alter fate, the friends resumed their journey. They retraced their steps back to the place of the crystal, though now its dazzling light had faded to a gentle glimmer, a quiet beacon of hope embedded in their collective memory. Clutching a map cobbled together from diary fragments and the symbols they had painstakingly gathered, Michael led the way, guiding the group steadily toward what they hoped was freedom. The road to liberation was not without its final challenges. Along a narrow, ancient, stone-paved path, they encountered a phenomenon that seemed to blur the boundaries of reality. A faint, elusive rustle behind them, a distortion in the very fabric of space that merged past and future into a single, bewildering instant. They pressed on, every step punctuated by the soft murmurs of the forest, each tree now a silent witness to their struggle. Then, amid a tangle of wild grapevines, the group discovered a hidden wooden door embedded among the gnarled roots of a colossal oak. The door, cloaked in moss and stripped of any visible lock, served as the final barrier between the world of relentless repetitions and the promise of genuine reality. With a firm resolve, Michael pushed the door open, and before them unfolded a narrow path, bathed in the early light of dawn. In that instant, an indescribable feeling washed over each of them, as if nature itself, long imprisoned in its own cyclic existence, had finally granted them the breath of true freedom. The winding road meandered through an abandoned clearing where dewdrops sparkled like tiny jewels in the newborn sunlight. Gone were the ominous repetitions and symmetry of the past. Only the promise of a fresh start remained. Sarah paused for a moment, gazing out toward the horizon, and murmured softly that sometimes, to break free, one must let go of old bonds and allow oneself to begin anew. Jake, placing a reassuring hand on Lynn's shoulder, agreed that every trial they had endured had, in its own way, forged them into stronger, more resilient individuals. Eddie offered a silent nod, his eyes reflecting the profound realization that their journey was not merely an escape from monotony, but a transformative passage into self-discovery. At last, nearing the end of their arduous journey, the forest began to recede, replaced gradually by an expansive plain where the air carried the fresh scent of grass and blooming wildflowers. The friends emerged onto the edge of a clearing where a small, time-worn house stood as a relic of bygone days, a silent testament to a world that once was. Even in this quiet refuge, subtle hints of the trials they had overcome remained woven into the fabric of the place. Michael, glancing back at the winding forest, felt an intangible connection between the events that had transpired and the new clarity that now illuminated their path. He understood that the choice they had made, that decisive moment at the ancient stone circle, had altered not only the course of their journey, but the very nature of their understanding of life itself. The house at the clearing became a symbol of a new beginning. Inside, amidst dust-laden furniture and the dim glow of the setting sun, they found a chalkboard covered in sketches, rudimentary maps drawn by someone who once navigated these same mysteries. Despite their simplicity, these notes spoke of resilience and the enduring possibility of transformation, even in the bleakest circumstances. In that final twilight hour, as the last vestiges of daylight gave way to night, the friends sensed that the forest had finally relinquished its hold on them. They were free, liberated not only from the cycle of repetition, but from the enigmatic forces that had haunted their every step. Every moment spent in that eerie labyrinth had woven itself into a tapestry of memories, a story told not in verbose detail, but in silent, indelible impressions. They now recognized that true strength lay in the ability to accept change and to press forward regardless of the uncertainty that lay ahead. Michael carefully gathered the talismans and symbols, tucking them away as cherished reminders of the path they had traversed. He knew that the road forward would still hold challenges, but the experience they had gained had opened their eyes to new possibilities. With brief, knowing glances exchanged among them, they silently acknowledged that every obstacle had prepared them for what awaited beyond the forest's shadow. Morning arrived with the tender caress of the sun's first rays, breaking through delicate clouds, bathing the open plain in a warm, golden light. Now on the threshold of a new chapter, the friends emerged from the old house with a cautious hope. With each step along the unfamiliar road, the weight of past trials began to lift, a quiet assurance that the haunting repetitions were now firmly behind them. As they strolled toward a nearby town, where reality awaited their return, every face they encountered, a brief smile here, a nod there, seemed to affirm that life continued, undeterred by even the most surreal of experiences. The mundane bustle of everyday existence appeared all the more precious after the ordeal in the endless forest. Eddie, his eyes fixed on the distant mountains, remarked softly that perhaps it was these very trials that had revealed the true value of time, not as an endless stream, but as a collection of precious, meaningful instants. Jake and Lynn exchanged a look that conveyed an unspoken understanding. Their shared journey had imparted lessons they would carry for a lifetime. Sarah, standing beneath the sprawling canopy of an old oak, walked forward with a resolute certainty, as if she sensed that her future was now intertwined with something far greater than she had ever imagined. In the days that followed their escape from the forest, the friends gathered in a quaint cafe in a small town, their conversation weaving together reflections on events that defied conventional explanation. Every word they exchanged carried the weight of an experience that transcended simple narration, a silent acknowledgement of the transformative journey they had endured. They chose not to recount every detail, leaving some mysteries to be held in the quiet recesses of memory. Yet each of them understood that the ordeal had been like a mirror, revealing both vulnerabilities and strengths that had long lain hidden. As the final rays of sunset painted the sky in hues of purple and gold, Michael ascended a small rise overlooking the town and its surroundings. Pausing for a moment, he savored the scene, a poignant symbol of an ending and a beginning. In his eyes glimmered the quiet conviction that the choices made in that ancient circle had altered their destinies irrevocably. Though the friends soon went their separate ways, the memory of that strange forest, the cryptic symbols, the enigmatic clock, and the radiant crystal that had unlocked the cycle of time remained etched in their hearts. For each of them, the experience was far more than a harrowing encounter. It was a profound journey of discovery that reshaped their very understanding of life. They had learned that even in the darkest labyrinths of existence, the possibility for renewal always flickers, like a distant, guiding light. And as the night draped its velvet blanket over the town, with countless stars twinkling in silent vigil overhead, somewhere deep within the forest, the echoes of ancient rituals and whispered memories lingered. Yet those echoes no longer held dominion over their fate. In that timeless moment, a new chapter began, here and now, in a world where time was not an adversary, but one of many currents flowing toward an ever-unfolding future.